I would like to thank everyone for joining us for our second information session tonight. With me tonight is Assistant Superintendent Eric DePorter, Chief Communications Officer Erica Crabiel, Director of Buildings and Grounds Dave Scarmato, and behind the technology is Director Andrew Peterman. On November 8th, 2022, the Glen Ellyn School District 41 residents will vote on a $49 million bond referendum to build a new elementary school and early learning center. This will solve the district's longstanding space issues at the elementary schools. In 2006, a boundary advisory committee developed a report that stated, the majority of the committee cannot support changing boundaries. All schools are crowded, and there would be little, if any, benefit to justify the disruption. The committee concluded with a unanimous understanding that the district is facing a facility issue. They urged the board to make a facility solution a top priority. If successful, the referendum will allow the district to keep class sizes small in our neighborhood schools by creating more space, offer full-day kindergarten for all families in their home school, continue building innovative opportunities for kids. It's important for everybody watching to note that these priorities emerged from the community engagement process. Erica is going to describe that process in a bit for those of you joining us for the first time.
Thank you, Dr. Kaskowski. As she said, before we get started into the details of the proposed projects, I just want to give some background on how we came up with the solution as a community, as a district, with the help of E.O. Sullivan. So although this has been a conversation for a very long time, last spring, the Board of Education approved a partnership with consultant E.O. Sullivan to help us create a plan, a comprehensive plan for the future, not just something that was a Band-Aid approach. At all these information sessions, the community had said to us, we want something comprehensive. And so the board approved this partnership to make sure that we could move forward in that way. And it was a 4-phase process to gather feedback through those community engagement sessions. They were in-person and virtual engagement sessions. We had a community committee. We did some online surveying, in-person surveying, and something that we've never done before in the 8 years that I've been here is we also did phone polling. And all this information is available on our website, the survey results, also the process, any of the presentations that were provided by E.O. Sullivan. And you can find that at d41.org / community engagement. And as I said before, the community-driven plan came together with the E.O. Sullivan to make sure that it was a comprehensive plan. The community explored 4 options to start. So the first option was the new full-day kindergarten center at Churchill. And for those who don't know, Churchill is one of our current schools here on the north side of Glen Ellyn. Option 2 was the new 5th grade center at Hadley, as well as a new early learning center at a location to be determined at another time. Option 3 was the new elementary school at Spalding property, and that's property that is already owned by the district. And then finally, option 4 was to do both that new elementary at Spalding and the new early learning center at the Churchill school property. And now Melissa is going to explain what E.O. Sullivan's recommendation was based on all of the community engagement that happened in the spring and into the summer.
So I'm going to try not to read too much off of slides for people, but this is important to note that this comes directly from E.O. Sullivan. So based on all of the data gathered to date, it's clear that the community opposes option 1. That should be removed from consideration. The community showed some willingness to get behind option 2, though it isn't their favorite. They're most in favor of option 3 and option 4. The plan should center around building a new elementary school on the Spalding property. While there are some concerns about redistricting and the size of that property, the D41 community shows the most willingness to accept that outcome over having to bus students outside of their neighborhood schools. In light of the current economy, opposition starts to increase from option 3 to option 4. The community supports the idea of adding an early learning center in addition to the new school, but the additional cost is giving them some pause. If there's a way to achieve these goals while reducing the cost from what was tested, option 4 is a viable path. To lessen the impact of option 4 and to act consistently with district financial policy, the district will be allocating $18 million towards option 4. We also, as mentioned in prior questions, scaled back from a 600 student building to a 500 student building. That will meet our space needs moving us into the future. So the final plan that we're talking about is the new elementary school on Spalding and the new early learning center at Churchill. Again, this addresses class size, it addresses full day kindergarten, it addresses space for things such as student supports, collaboration, small group instruction, therapies. It also supports pre-K expansion of our early learning program. This is a plan, as Erica had mentioned, feedback that came from the strategic community group that was part of the engagement process, was asked for multiple times about being comprehensive. This is a plan that will take the district into the future as a destination district, one that this community can take pride in. The new K-5 school on Spalding property, which again, as Erica stated, is property that the district owns. This is slated to be a 2-story building. There will be no more than 500 students served in this school. Using this property will not require obtaining any residential property. There is ample space. Eric will walk us through some renderings in a little bit, but there is residential space for everything that is needed, including property and play area. The district will propose new boundaries to move students to the new school. As most of you are aware, we have a special board meeting scheduled for tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. at Hadley. We will be reviewing the proposed boundary change recommendations. This also allows all schools to have full day kindergarten. It's important to note that 91% of all districts in DuPage County currently have full day kindergarten. 90% of the districts across the state of Illinois have full day kindergarten. In terms of new boundary proposals, again, we will be covering this in much more detail tomorrow, but a bit about our process. So District 41 engaged with a third party to create a geocoding tool that allows us to use available data to make well-informed decisions to lower enrollment in our existing elementary schools and populate a new building. Each existing elementary school would be impacted in order to provide enough space for full day kindergarten in each of our neighborhood elementary schools. We anticipate that we will have the ability to offer the option to grandfather fifth graders who wish to remain at their existing elementary school for their 5th grade year. At this time, we cannot commit to do more for siblings, but we can commit to 5th graders with an openness to revisit this and discuss the ability to grandfather siblings as if there is a successful referendum and as the time draws closer to actually open doors. All districts have to address enrollment and boundary issues from time to time. Even without a successful referendum, a boundary change process could be needed in District 41.
I'm going to jump in now. Currently, what do we have? And this slide kind of highlights what we have right now for preschool. We house our preschool program at Forest Glen, again, one of our existing 4 elementary schools near the north side of Glen Ellen. We were recently awarded gold status. To explain a little bit about that, what that means is we have a grant from the Preschool for All program. So that program comes with grant coordinators and really individuals that come and check up on our program regularly to make sure that we're in compliance with the grant requirements. And in doing so, they do some observation and analysis. And really, it was a good pat on the back this year to receive that gold star status. We've not had that in the past. And I think that speaks positively about the program that we do offer. But once again, it's 6 classrooms at Forest Glen. We currently are packed to the gills there. We've retrofit spaces at Forest Glen to make those pre-K classes appropriate for the age of children in there, yet, they were designed for older children. So that's really kind of an area where we really like to improve upon. And that's part of the reason why we're pushing for a pre-K expansion, so we can have the right type of space for these children. And as you see on the bottom of the slide, it will really help us with Forest Glen. Forest Glen is overcrowded right now. We don't have space for staff offices. Our principal doesn't have an office most of the time. He has to give up that space. So, what this expansion would allow us to do, move those students out of Forest Glen, open those rooms up so we can, utilize that space for the non-pre-K program in that school and really design the space for those children at that pre-K expansion. Going along. Yeah. One more thing I would like to talk about. One of the problems we deal with pre-K on a daily basis is transportation and access, getting these little guys and girls in and out of the building. So one of the advantages of moving to a site off of Churchill, and we'll see in this video in here in just a second, is it would permit us to have a dedicated entrance for those families and their children. So when we get to that point, I'll speak to it. But Andrew, if you want to hit play, I can kind of walk everyone through what we're looking at. What we're looking at here is Spalding. Again, this is that area east of Main Street, north of the Great Western Trail. There used to be a school on this site. Right now, as you can see in the green space, this is a drone flyover. This is all unimproved land. So right now, what we're looking at is a mock-up from our architect, which really talks to what is possible on this site. As you can see, that's a building right side of what we're looking for. And Andrew, if you want to pause it right here, can you pause this? One of the questions we did receive was, where's the playground? So in these renderings, if you can see that little, I guess, egg-shaped tan thing at the bottom, that's supposed to represent where a playground could go. Obviously, there's hardscape to the left of that, and there's open greenscape to the right. So go ahead and hit play again. This just kind of shows how, the acreage is sufficient to put a building on there. We would not need any additional land outside of that property. I know there's been talk about possibly needing to move into the residential areas adjacent to this. That's not necessary. This is just another rendering. Again, these were just models that our architect put up to give you an idea of how a building right size would fit on this space. Final design of these properties will be something we'll talk about after the election or after the vote. Preferences, community preferences to determine what that building should look like. So I guess while we're looking at this, one other thing I'll point out is you can see 2/3 of the way up the screen, there's a road that goes left and right. That is actually the boundary. The north edge of that is the boundary of the district's own property. Everything north of that is actually a Glen Ellen Park District park. So that would not be part of the construction or future school site. We're going to get previews. So again, this is just another idea of what a solution might look like. After that, now we're in Churchill. So what you're looking at is the northern edge of the Churchill property right now. And then right there is where they kind of imposed school expansion might look like. Importantly, I want to stress that that's just a big white rectangle. That would not be the design that we ultimately decide to go on, I'm sure. The variable that does matter is it needs to be attached to Churchill Elementary. So it would be attached in some location. Generally, the early talk is that this expansion would need to be located more to the western edge, so the right edge of your screen, so that they would be able to maintain the green space that building is right now covering. Important to note that, the property north of this is likely to be district owned by the time this construction begins. So there's going to be ample space to move any construction project into the right orientation so that the students have all the space they need outside. Another big variable here, and I touched on it earlier, as you can kind of see from that parking lot, there's a road that, kind of goes to the north, and eventually you'll see it cuts to the west. That's really important because we're going to have egress and really entrance and exit to the TC Center. There you can see it there. That runs out to Bloomingdale Road. What's really nice about that is then we can have a dedicated entrance that's separate from the, normal K-5 entrance on the other side of the building and parking lot. So these pre-K families would have their own entrance and exit off of Bloomingdale to relieve some of the pressure on Geneva right now we see. Again, this design is just for visual purposes here, and I'm sure that it will not end up being a plain rectangle. Next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the tax impact. Obviously the referendum question is asking for $49 million. The estimated cost of the total projects would be $67 million. So importantly, the district has a fund balance policy designed so that if there's extra dollars on a year-to-year basis above, meaning basically if you run a surplus and there's more revenue that comes in than expenditures that come out, we're going to earmark those extra dollars for a specific purpose. And that's exactly what we've done over the last handful of years, is the district has ran a surplus budget, and those extra dollars have been deliberately set aside, knowing full well that the ultimate goal that the board had expressed was to go out for some type of ask so that we can bring full day kindergarten to the district. So that's the reason why there exists 18 million available to lower that referendum ask to 49. At the bottom of this, it does illustrate what the tax impact would be. And Andrew, if you want to go ahead and click on that link, I think it takes us to the page on our website. So if you go under the district website and click on the referendum information tab, it'll take you to this tax calculator. And if you scroll down, what's really cool about it is you can go ahead and put the assessed value that you would find on your tax bill in there. So as we've talked about all along, a $400,000 house, go ahead and put that in, you hit update. And when you scroll down here, you have some options that you would, I think that makes sense to most people. But then at the bottom, it gives you that estimated annual tax impact. So $275.42. I point this out just so that, if you have a house that's valued differently than $400,000, I would encourage you to go out, use this tax estimator, put in your value and see what the estimated tax impact would be for you. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the reserves. I touched on it briefly a minute ago, but our fund balance policy is such that, we do accumulate those extra dollars, and the board has identified a specific use for them, which is in line with our fund balance policy. To quantify where we stand, as of our last independent audit, that was last June 30th of 2021, the audit for June 30th, 2022 is nearly complete, but it'll be another probably month before we get that report from our auditors. But we had $32,300,000 roughly last year. And I can say that on a cash basis, on an unaudited basis, we did end the school year that just ended 6/30/22 in a positive position, meaning that we will have more fund reserves to pull from than the 32.3 that we ended the previous year at. That bottom part, I think we already covered. How do we have $18 million to contribute to this project? It's pretty straightforward. We have a very conservative approach to spending in the district. All of the department leaders in the district take that responsibility very seriously. We set a budget and expenditures are approved. Every expenditure is approved or denied based on its appropriateness. So with that in mind, we have been able to accumulate a fund reserve, and that's how we're able to contribute 18 million towards this problem. Timeline. Melissa, I think you're muted.
Yep. Best conversations that way. I can take the timeline slide. Again, just to recap where we've been and what we've done and a little bit about where we're going. So we began the community engagement process over the spring and summer of 2022. On August 15th, 2022, the board approved the question. The district launched the information campaign beginning of August of this year. The community committee forms in September of 2022. Boundary proposals will be shared. Again, that's coming tomorrow at the October 5th Special Board of Education meetings. Renderings of the renderings of the buildings presented, that was done at our first meeting, and again tonight. Again, just a reminder, those are only renderings. The process, as we have been walked through with both our financial advisors and our architects, is that the heavy lifting work of design really comes after we know the outcome of referendum. The community will vote on November 8th, 2022, and if approved, projects are slated to be completed in no less than 4 years, but no more than 5. So to review the question, just so people can get familiar with what you will see on the ballot, I don't need to review this for people or read it out loud, but please know the exact wording of the ballot language is here. And so this will tell you, show you exactly what to expect when you review the ballot and see the language there. I think it's important to note when we think about the question is created by legal counsel and bond counsel. So there are many eyes on the question and how it's written. There are very specific legal requirements to drafting a question and putting it on the ballot. Eric, I have this one as you.
Okay. So this is a pretty common question that we receive. I think it's important to understand that I think at last count, what do we say, about 72 to 78? I think it's 72% of
78.
78. It was one or the other. About 78% of District 41 residents do not have children that go to our schools. So this is a really important question. You know, I don't have kids in the school. Why does it matter to me? And you know, if you read this slide, it talks about some important things, but I would add that, you know, Glen Ellen is a destination town in large part because we have neighborhood schools. Children can walk to schools. They're close by. They're not taking super long bus rides. By adding a 5th elementary school, I think it would even, you know, kind of refine some of those neighborhood schools a little bit. You know, we have some areas that are attendance areas that are kind of out of whack where children might be on a bus a little longer than normal. But by adding that 5th elementary school, we're able to kind of devise boundaries that are more intuitive and kind of make more sense. And it also is going to matter for real estate values. You know, I think there's a lot of data out there that supports that, you know, having neighborhood schools, having schools in your neighborhood that are close enough to your house that you can walk to really increases the value of those homes. And when we're considering building a new K-5 up at Spalding, you know, that's an unincorporated area. Adding a school up there, you know, from everything I've read and the data that I've reviewed, it really supports that would increase the value of those homes because new families moving in would be attracted to the option or the idea of being, you know, a walking neighborhood school up in their community. So something to consider. I think it matters. And I think in the long term, you know, when we really look closely at this question, you know, anybody that their kids have maybe progressed out of elementary and high school, you know, the value that you receive as maintaining a community that's really coveted for its high quality education is only going to be expanded by, you know, furthering our offerings and making that additional K-5, you know, provide full day kindergarten, which is something that 91% of DuPage County already has. It's just going to make it that much more attractive.
Okay, so at this time, we're going to work our way through questions that were submitted. Please keep in mind that some questions have already been answered in our presentation tonight. Some questions will be answered in upcoming board meetings and also through our growing and expanding FAQs. So we're going to tackle these. We've clustered questions into common topic areas and we will work our way through these. So Eric, there's some financial questions if you want to kick us off.
Yep, and we'll get started. So First question, what happens if this project goes over budget? It's a great question. When we're doing the cost modeling with our architect, cost escalation is absolutely a big part of that formula. So I guess my answer to that question would be that the numbers we provided as an estimate to the construction really takes into account, not being able to start this project, for at least probably 12 months while we get through the work of designing and bidding the project out. So cost escalation is included in the estimated project cost already. So I don't believe that there'd be very high likelihood that we would go on a cost overrun. Second question, if the referendum passes, will there be tuition charges for full day kindergarten, and what will that look like? The board has not indicated that they intend to charge for full day kindergarten. I think that would probably be a conversation to have down the line. But I can say once again, in having discussions with the board, there's never been any discussion about charging for this. It's only been just this push to add that offering to the community. Next question. If the board elects to request a max levy increase of 5% on the 2022 levy, what would the combined impact be for a taxpayer if the referendum passes and debt is issued right away? Very important question. So we don't typically model out what the levy change year over year is on an individual taxpayer because that's just super difficult to do that. We don't know the demographic or the property value changes during the year. I can tell you that it would be slightly more this year because CPI was at a record level last December. That was 7.0%. So we've never had a CPI that high. PTEL, which is the law that governs what a school district can ask in new money to add to their existing tax levy, caps the ask at 5%. So for instance, even though CPI was 7.0, the max add that the Board of Education can approve is a 5% add. That is slightly higher than typical. We had a 2.4 a few years ago, a 1.4 last year. So this would add a little bit. It's going to be discussed a little bit more in detail tomorrow. And additionally, once we get towards those levy discussions. But I guess my response to that question would be the typical year over year increase will be slightly more based on the levy itself. And then you'd have to look at that tax calculator to really quantify what that change would be for you as an individual. Melissa, you want to take the next ones?
Sure. The need for educational common spaces and arts and music space in our school on landlocked school property has been studied for multiple decades. In addition to opening space in the buildings, please share the educational and student development opportunities that this referendum may provide today and tomorrow. I think first it's important to recognize what Erica started with is that we were asked by participants of the Community Engagement Strategic Committee to present a comprehensive plan, and their words exactly were not a Band-Aid approach. That being said, not everybody will agree with this position. Regardless, we know that the lack of space in our schools has existed for a long time, and it impacts our ability to deliver services and supports in spaces that are most conducive to learning. Education looks very different today, and kids need the opportunity to move, to collaborate, and to participate in hands-on learning experiences if we are to prepare them for their future. I think the reality is for all of us on this, school looks very different today than what it looked like when we went to school, and we need to create the spaces to allow that type of learning to happen. The new school and expansion will be on the north side of Glen Ellen, north of Geneva Road. I live south of the tracks and north of Hill Avenue, so my public elementary school is Lincoln. How does this positively impact my kids who wouldn't benefit from attending Churchill or this new Spalding school? I know many people with kids I talk to want to know how this doesn't just benefit families that live near Spalding and Churchill, which are typically not the areas with the higher property taxes compared to the more central Glen Ellen. I think this is a decision that is made in the best interest of all students in the district, regardless of their zip code or address. Providing full-day kindergarten requires space, and this allows us to open up and find that space. It also it demonstrates a commitment to early learners that is very important for our community to make. Again, full-day kindergarten exists in 90% of the districts across the state and 91% of the districts in our county. This district has been trying to solve the issue or have the discussion to culminate the conversations and action around, are we going to deliver on full day kindergarten or are we not? If the referendum passes, will half-day kindergarten still be an option, or will all classes be full day? I think it's important to note that parents who want to opt for a half-day will always be able to do so. The classrooms will be full-day classrooms, but we will strategically plan our core instruction the way other districts do who have full-day kindergarten. The reason for not having devoted half-day kindergarten classrooms is I don't anticipate, but it's something that could be contemplated at the time, but I don't anticipate that there would be enough kids left in each building that would want only half-day kindergarten. That's certainly a conversation that could happen at that time, but parents never lose the ability to choose half-day for their children. Why can we not find a faster solution to full-day kindergarten in 4 to 5 years? Most people who will benefit from this do not even have children that are even born yet. I think, again, it goes back to this has been investigated for years and years in this district. We do not have space in our elementary schools to offer full-day kindergarten. That's just our reality, and this board has charged us, and the community engagement process led us down the direction of possible solutions, and that's how we landed where we are today. We purchased our house last year specifically to be in the Lincoln School District. We would be very upset if the boundaries changed and my children were sent to a different school, and I think my son would be negatively impacted to have to switch schools. How many families will be impacted? What you'll hear tomorrow on the boundary proposal discussion is approximately 25 to 26% of students will be impacted by a school attendance change. Logistically, if we're going to populate a new school, we have to move kids out of the existing 4 elementary buildings. Unfortunately, there's just no way to open and populate a new school without moving somebody out of the one that we're in. Again, we know that we could commit to grandfathering in 5th graders. So at the time that we would be opening doors to students in a 5th elementary, we know that we could commit to grandfathering in 5th graders, and that there's the possibility to discuss a bit more grandfathering. It's just too far in advance to commit to that. But we know that we could commit to have the space and be able to do grandfathering for 5th grade. I also want to say that whenever you open a new school, you don't open with all brand new teachers. So part of the work that the district has to do prior to opening a new building is determining sections that remain at the 4 existing buildings and determining staff that we can move. You want to have a nice balance and a nice complement in every building of veteran staff as well as new staff. So again, I have every confidence that this building will be as fantastic as all of our 4 elementaries are right now. Does the board plan to change class size targets if the referendum passes? If so, why? All of our planning and conversations up to this point, we are planning based on using the current class size targets. There has been no conversations about raising those targets or changing the targets, but a board could obviously entertain those conversations at any time if they chose to, but there has been no conversation. And obviously the work of all of this is about keeping those class sizes low to the low end of our current targets. So if the goal was to increase class size targets, then all of this work is kind of a moot point. How will building a new school allow the 4 existing schools to accommodate full-day kindergarten? I haven't seen this explained in clear and concise ways. The addition of the 5th elementary school provides the space needed for each school to have the available classrooms to host full-day classes in their building. The average class size for Forest Glen 2021 and Ben Franklin are 17, 15, and 16 respectively. Why is the referendum communications referring to overcrowding or class size as an issue or a driver in the proposal? It is obvious that we dropped in enrollment, as did many schools during the pandemic. We are seeing our enrollment tick back up. I also think it's important to note that as a district over time, our enrollment has had blips of large grade levels go through and blips of lower grade levels go through. But as a whole, our district has been fairly constant in terms of enrollment. We don't forecast, nor does our CASARTA report, forecast for our future that we should expect to see enrollment ticking down. So again, this is bringing to a culmination years and years of conversations about making space for our elementaries and how to use that space. Moving on, please provide the district's model for including same day. I'm going to guess that they meant full day kindergarten at each of the existing District 41 schools without the new school. Again, it's not a matter of adding one classroom. It's a matter, if I'm just going to use this example, if you have 2 sections of half day kindergarten, that's actually 4 classes of half day. So you would need 4 classrooms to accommodate those kids in a full day kindergarten placement. So it is not a 1-for-1 swap of classrooms from what we're using, sections of what we're using for half day to full day. But again, we don't have the space in our existing 4 buildings to do this.
Hey, Dr. K, I'm going to jump in real quick just to clarify, because as a listener to that answer, let me kind of get more specific about it. Let's say we have 4 sections of half day kindergarten in a building. That's 2 classrooms, right? If we go to full day kindergarten, now we need 4 classrooms. So it really doubles the number of classrooms you need, and we don't have any empty classrooms across the district. So just kind of wanted to piggyback on that to make sure there wasn't any confusion.
Thank you, Eric. Erica, I think the next one is you.
Yeah, I wanted to answer the next one. It's really about why we are hosting these sessions virtually. And of course, we have engaged in all different types of ways. I mentioned the phone polling, we've done in-person community sessions, surveying, and also the virtual sessions. And by far, we had the greatest participation when we've had virtual sessions. So if any of the listeners here had been to our E.O. Sullivan community engagement sessions, we were lucky if we got a dozen people. Typically, it was a half a dozen, 6 at the most. And so when we talked about this, we wanted to make sure that we touched and informed as many people as possible. And for example, tonight, I was just looking, we had up to 29 people on the Zoom tonight. And so that would far exceed any in-person. And the other thing is we're in a different phase of the referendum where the district is only able legally to share information and not engage or advocate one way or the other for the referendum. So that's why we chose to do these virtually.
Moving on, how come there was not a specific outreach to families with kids ages 0 to 5 regarding the need for full day kindergarten? From the survey questions, the outreach sounds geared towards families already in school of whom will not benefit from or need full day. Again, I think this goes back to what Eric talked about. With parents of children make up only about 22% of our taxpayers. The vast majority of people who pay taxes into District 41 do not have kids in the district. So the community engagement process was very specifically planned and delivered on by E.O. Sullivan to get a sampling of feedback across different groups that make up our taxing body for the district. If the majority of the community surveyed did not vote for the referendum option the board voted for, why can't we not have both top options on the ballot? If I'm understanding this question correctly, the answer is simple. Legally, that's not how this process works. Only the board can adopt the resolution with the specific language of the ballot question. That's what appears on the ballot. Moving into some facilities and buildings and grounds question. Eric, I think this next few are you.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We had to do some research on this. When was the original Spalding school demolished, and what was the reasoning for tearing it down? It was demolished in 1997. If memory serves, I think it was built in 1956, was operated by the school district for 20 years, and then it was closed due to declining enrollment and just there was no need for it, as well as a couple other school buildings that have since been demolished in Glen Ellen. So the second part of that question was, what was the reasoning for tearing it down? Can't be positive. Wasn't here when that conversation happened, but I can tell you that, it was torn down when it was approximately 40 to 41 years old. My guess would be that the cost to maintain and get it up to code was probably prohibitive at that time, and that was why that decision was made. Next question. Please share information on past discussions with the Glen Ellen Park District properties, the Main Street Rec Center and Spring Avenue Rec Center, Can the school district return to using Main Street Rec or the Spring Avenue Park building as an elementary school? We looked at this quite extensively back in 2018. The feedback we received from the Park District, who in fact, they own both those buildings. The school district does not own either of those buildings. So the Park District owns those buildings. Spring Avenue, we looked at as a possible solution. The cost to renovate that, to move it back to being appropriately designed for an elementary school, would be nearly identical or close to the cost to construct a new building, is what we determined back at that point, because the Park District has completely modified the inside of that building. And then the Main Street Rec Center, again, very similar. It's a very old building, but it is highly utilized by the Park District. And to be frank, there was not interest on the Park District side to sell either of those buildings, because they are important assets for the Park District that get regular and consistent use. Next question. Since sidewalks are required to avoid busing per ISB and IDOT safety busing instructions, does the district plan to bus all students to Spalding or to install sidewalks in the entire neighborhood? That's actually a misnomer. There are a number of unincorporated neighborhoods throughout the state of Illinois, and I actually called ISB to ask this question, and they said that in an unincorporated area, you are not required to provide busing to all children. The only busing that District 41 would need to provide to students to attend Spalding would be for any child that had to traverse a hazardous crossing or lived greater than 1.5 miles away from the school. So the sidewalk question was a good question, and I'm glad I called ISB, because they were very clear saying that no, you do not have to bus all children in that type of situation. Next one is the Spalding Park. Is the Spalding lot size large enough to house a school? And if the school is approved, will property along First, Second, or Park be acquired via eminent domain? First part of that question, yes, absolutely. Hopefully in the video, you can see how a building would fit on there with adequate green space for children to play outside. So there's ample acreage to build a school there. And then the second part of that, would the school district use eminent domain to acquire any residential property? Absolutely not. Would not be part of the plan, has not been part of any discussions, and it would not be required. Next question. I think this one, Melissa, you want to tackle this one?
Sure. Does the district currently own all of the real property needed for the planned expansion building at Churchill? I'm going to ask everyone, please tune in to tomorrow night's board meeting. The board will be taking action related to property. This is a board action item, and so unfortunately I can't get into the details tonight, but please tune in to tomorrow night's meeting.
Next question. Will the plan include a traffic light at First or Second Street in Maine? Currently, it can be difficult to turn left onto Maine without the extra traffic of a new school. Great question. We did commission a third party to do a traffic study. We've not yet gotten the feedback or their report, but that would certainly be something that would be considered. I'm aware of that intersection myself. We've had a number of minor traffic accidents occur there in the last couple of years because of that hill. So that would certainly be a question to look into, and we hope that that traffic study kind of informed some of that conversation as well.
Next question. The district explored an optional full-day kindergarten. The district explored an optional full-day kindergarten with one section of full-day kindergarten at each school. Question. Could the district get creative and find a way to do this with existing buildings? The answer to that is no. Perhaps even pods if needed at some school buildings. I realize no one likes pods, but I think we should trial out a few options before this massive investment in a fifth elementary school. I just want to share, historically, the district had portables years ago, and the community demonstrated a very clear dissatisfaction with maintaining them for a variety of reasons. Housing full-day kindergarten and portables has never been deemed a satisfactory option. Has District 41 and District 87 met to preliminarily discuss the possibility of consolidating? With Dr. K retiring in 2 years, would this be a good time to have this discussion so as to explore another route than searching for a new superintendent? Last information meeting, we did talk about the topic of consolidation. What I want to reiterate and repeat is that district consolidation is an extremely complicated and lengthy process. There are stipulations regarding consolidations, one being that you need 2 willing partners. So I would encourage people to please watch the video from the last information session because Eric gets into some additional information and details regarding consolidation. And that's just not a viable option that begins with the district to solve a space issue or to solve a full day kindergarten issue. Where is the Spalding property located? Specific address. The Spalding property is an unimproved tract of land that the district owns located east of Main Street between 1st and 2nd Street. It is located in the neighborhood just north of the Great Western Trail. There is a Glen Ellen Park District adjacent to the northern boundary of the district-owned land. The park's address is 22 West 325 2nd Street in Glen Ellen. If the referendum doesn't pass, will any of the alternate plans be considered? I think what's important to note about this is the board would have to restart the entire process. So I cannot speak on their behalf as to whether they would be willing to do so. This has been a multi-month process to get community engagement and to land where we are. So that would have to be lengthy, I would have to imagine, and very serious conversation given to that topic. When will rezoning be shared with the community since early voting is already open? And will the boundaries be changed after the vote? Again, we are rolling out the proposed recommended boundary changes tomorrow evening at the special board meeting that begins at 6:30 p.m. at Hadley. You will hear the board weigh in and ask questions, and I anticipate that they will make a commitment to this community. There is no plan to present a recommendation and then make a change after the election. This is a plan that has taken a long look at how to basically meet 2 key objectives. One is how to open up space for full day kindergarten in all of the buildings, to equalize enrollment as best as possible across 5 existing elementary buildings, and to populate a new school in a logical way with kids sprinkled across the grade levels. Knowing that we're working on information that we have today and projecting into the future. It's not an exact science, but because our enrollment is fairly stable over time, we can make some educated projections about what that will look like and number of sections that will equate to. But we will be rolling that out tomorrow so that people have that information and a voice of commitment for the board before they cast their vote. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We know that your time is precious. I want to thank you for becoming well-informed prior to casting your vote. Please note that we will be going into greater detail at tomorrow's board meeting, and that we will also continue to build our FAQs, and we will be addressing additional topics that come up in our future meetings. So thank you again, everybody, tonight for joining us on behalf of everyone from District 41. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you.